Lucy had always been a quiet and introverted girl. Her life was a dull routine, consisting of school, homework, and the occasional book she would lose herself in. But there was one thing that made her feel less alone in the world: her best friend, Emily. Emily was unlike anyone Lucy had ever known. She was vivacious, with a wild mane of red hair that seemed to have a life of its own. Her eyes were a striking shade of green that could capture your attention from across the room. Emily was fearless and always pushed Lucy out of her comfort zone, introducing her to new experiences. One autumn evening, as the leaves fell like golden raindrops from the trees, Emily had an idea. "Lucy, let's go camping in the old woods behind my house this weekend. It'll be an adventure we'll never forget." Lucy hesitated. She wasn't fond of the outdoors, but she couldn't refuse her best friend's enthusiasm. "All right," she finally agreed, "but let's promise to stick together no matter what." Emily's laughter was like a melody as she exclaimed, "Of course, Lucy, best friends forever, remember?" The weekend arrived quickly, and they set off for the woods with their backpacks, camping gear, and a sense of excitement that seemed to hang in the air like mist. They arrived at the edge of the forest, where the towering trees cast long shadows. Emily led the way, her steps sure and confident. As they ventured deeper into the woods, Lucy couldn't help but feel a growing unease. The sun was sinking lower in the sky, casting eerie shapes and shadows. The forest seemed to come alive with strange sounds, rustling leaves, distant hoots, and the haunting cry of a lone owl. "Emily, maybe we should head back," Lucy suggested, her voice quivering, but Emily laughed it off, her green eyes dancing with excitement. "Don't be such a scaredy cat, Lucy. We're having an adventure, remember?" Hours passed, and the forest became an impenetrable maze. The trees grew thicker, and the shadows deeper. Lucy's fear intensified with every step, but she couldn't bring herself to admit she wanted to turn back. Suddenly, Emily stopped in her tracks. Her expression changed from excitement to confusion as she stared at a gnarled ancient tree in front of them. "This is strange," Emily murmured. "I don't remember this tree being here." Lucy, feeling a shiver crawl up her spine, stared at the tree too. Its bark was twisted into grotesque faces, and the branches seemed to reach out like skeletal fingers. "Let's go around it," Lucy suggested. They tried to circumvent the eerie tree, but it was as if the forest had shifted around them. No matter which direction they turned, the twisted tree remained before them. Panic set in as Emily's confident demeanor crumbled. "This isn't right, Lucy. Something's wrong. We need to get out of here." Lucy nodded, her heart pounding. But as they tried to retrace their steps, they found themselves lost in an endless sea of trees. The forest had swallowed them whole. As night fell, the woods grew darker, and the sounds that once seemed innocent became menacing. Strange whispers filled the air, and the trees seemed to leer at them with their grotesque faces. Emily's earlier enthusiasm had been replaced by sheer terror. "Lucy!" Emily stammered, her voice trembling. "We should never have come here. I'm so scared." Lucy wrapped her arms around her friend, trying to provide comfort, but her own fear was consuming her. "We'll stick together, Emily. We promised." They stumbled through the darkness, each step taking them further into the labyrinthine forest. Time lost all meaning, and exhaustion began to weigh them down. They were on the brink of despair when they heard a faint sound, a soft, melodic hum. Following the sound, they came upon a clearing bathed in an eerie, ethereal light. In the center of the clearing stood a beautiful, otherworldly figure, with long, flowing hair and eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. "Welcome, lost souls," the figure whispered, her voice like a haunting melody. "You have entered my domain, and now you must pay the price." Terror gripped Lucy and Emily as they realized they were trapped in the clutches of something not of this world. The figure beckoned them closer, and they had no choice but to obey. Their vision blurred, and they felt themselves being pulled into the very essence of the forest itself. Weeks turned into months, and Lucy and Emily were never seen again. Their families searched tirelessly, but the forest had swallowed them whole, leaving no trace behind. As the years passed, their disappearance became a legend in the small town, a cautionary tale whispered around campfires, and in the heart of the old woods, the gnarled ancient tree stood as a silent sentinel, its twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, waiting for its next victims to wander into its dark embrace. Best friends forever, lost to the depths of the forest, their fate a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurked in the shadows of the unknown. When Sarah moved into her new house on Elm Street, she didn't expect to find a best friend in the most unexpected of places. The neighborhood was quiet, and the house, although old and somewhat eerie, had a certain charm that drew her in. She quickly settled in, but it was the basement that piqued her curiosity. The basement had always been a place of mystery for Sarah. The previous owner had left it untouched, full of dusty old boxes and cobwebs. One rainy evening, with nothing better to do, Sarah decided to venture down there. As she descended the creaking wooden stairs, a chill ran down her spine. At the far end of the basement, Sarah discovered a peculiar door. It was unlike any other door in the house. The wood was darker, more weathered, and etched with strange symbols she couldn't decipher. Sarah reached for the doorknob, and as she turned it, she heard a faint whisper, almost like a sigh. Ignoring her unease, she pushed the door open. Inside the room was a small, dimly lit space filled with old books, candles, and an assortment of peculiar objects. The air was heavy with the scent of incense, and in the center of the room, Sarah saw an old, tattered Ouija board. It was covered in dust, but something about it drew her in. The planchette was missing, but Sarah felt compelled to use it. She made a makeshift planchette from a scrap of paper and a glass. As Sarah placed her fingers on the glass, it began to move on its own, spelling out words. "Hello, Sarah," it spelled. Sarah's heart raced. She couldn't believe what was happening. The glass continued to move, spelling out, "I am your best friend." "Who are you?" Sarah stammered. The glass spelled out, "I have been waiting for you, Sarah. I am the one who will never leave you." Sarah's unease grew, but a strange curiosity overcame her. She continued to communicate with the entity, which called itself Malachi. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Malachi forged an unusual bond. She visited the basement every night and they talked for hours. Malachi seemed to know everything about her, even her deepest secrets. As time passed, Sarah's life began to change. She became increasingly isolated from her friends and family. She no longer had any desire to go out or socialize. Malachi was all she needed. He was her confidant, her advisor, and her best friend. But as their connection deepened, Sarah noticed disturbing changes in her own behavior. She started having vivid nightmares, filled with grotesque, nightmarish creatures. She would wake up covered in cold sweat, unable to shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One night, in the midst of a particularly terrifying dream, Sarah woke to find strange symbols etched into her flesh, matching those on the basement door. Desperate for answers, she decided to research the history of the house. What she discovered sent shivers down her spine. The previous owner had been a practicing occultist, rumored to have dabbled in dark rituals. It was said that he had been trying to summon a powerful entity to serve him as a best friend, but the ritual had gone terribly wrong. Sarah realized that Malachi was not a friendly spirit at all. He was something far more malevolent. She knew she had to sever the connection, but Malachi had grown stronger and he refused to let her go. He threatened her, promising to make her life a living nightmare if she tried to break their bond. Terrified but determined, Sarah sought help from a local priest, Father Thomas. He agreed to perform an exorcism, but the entity's power was formidable. As Father Thomas chanted the prayers, the room grew cold, and objects began to levitate. Malachi's voice echoed through the room, a sinister, otherworldly sound that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. But Father Thomas persisted, his faith unwavering. As the exorcism reached its climax, a blinding light engulfed the room, and a deafening roar filled the air. When the light finally dissipated, Sarah was left breathless, lying on the floor, while the basement lay in ruins. Father Thomas helped Sarah to her feet, and they both knew that Malachi was gone. The bond had been broken, but the price had been high. Sarah's once peaceful life was in shambles, and she would carry the scars, both physical and emotional, for the rest of her days. As she moved on from Elm Street, Sarah couldn't help but look back at the house with a sense of dread. The basement door had been sealed shut, the symbols etched into the wood forever hidden from sight. She knew she had escaped something truly horrifying, but the memory of Malachi, her unholy best friend, would haunt her for the rest of her life. It was a small, quiet town, nestled deep in the woods, far away from the hustle and bustle of city life. In this serene setting lived a young woman named Emily. She was known to be quite shy and introverted, preferring the company of her books over people. But there was one person she held dear to her heart, her best friend, Sarah. Sarah was the polar opposite of Emily. She was outgoing, vivacious, and always had a smile on her face. The two had been inseparable since childhood, their friendship growing stronger with each passing year. But as they reached their early 20s, life began to take them down separate paths. Sarah moved to the city for a job, while Emily remained in their hometown, taking care of her ailing mother. Despite the distance, they kept their friendship alive through letters and phone calls. Emily often found solace in Sarah's voice, especially after her mother's passing. It was as if Sarah's laughter could chase away the loneliness that lingered in the corners of Emily's life. One chilly autumn evening, Emily received a call from Sarah that sent shivers down her spine. Sarah's voice trembled as she whispered, "Emily, I need you to come to the city. Something strange is happening." Without hesitation, Emily packed her bags and caught the next train to the city. She arrived at Sarah's apartment, and as soon as they embraced, Emily could sense the fear in her best friend's eyes. Sarah explained how odd things had been occurring in her apartment over the past few weeks. Objects moved on their own, lights flickered, and she often felt a chilling presence lurking in the shadows. As she recounted her experiences, Emily's concern deepened. Together, they decided to spend the night in the apartment, hoping to uncover the truth behind these eerie occurrences. As the night wore on, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. The air grew colder, and a faint whisper echoed through the apartment, sending shivers down her spine. Sarah's gaze fixated on a dusty old mirror that stood against the far wall. She approached it cautiously and wiped away the grime. What they saw in the reflection was not their own faces, but a grotesque, twisted figure with hollow eyes and a sinister grin. It seemed to beckon them, drawing them closer. In a panic, they stumbled back, but the mirror seemed to come alive, reaching out with ghostly tendrils that wrapped around their wrists. They struggled to break free, their screams filling the room, but the mirror's grip only tightened. As the room darkened, Emily's heart raced. She couldn't bear to see her best friend in such agony. Desperation took hold, and she grabbed a nearby lamp and smashed it against the cursed mirror. Shards of glass scattered across the room, and the sinister figure in the reflection let out a blood-curdling scream before dissipating into the darkness. Gasping for breath, Sarah and Emily collapsed on the floor, shaken and terrified. The apartment fell silent, as if the malevolent force that had haunted them had finally retreated. But they knew it was far from over. Days turned into weeks, and the events in Sarah's apartment grew increasingly horrifying. Emily's presence seemed to have stirred something sinister, something that refused to let go of its newfound prey. Sarah's health deteriorated rapidly, her once vibrant spirit fading away like a dying ember. Emily reached out to every expert she could find, from priests to paranormal investigators, but none could offer a solution. The entity that had latched onto Sarah seemed to feed off her fear and despair, growing stronger with each passing day. Desperate and determined, Emily delved into research about the mirror, tracing its dark history back to a long-forgotten cult that had used it for unspeakable rituals. It was a portal to the spirit world, a gateway for malevolent forces to cross into the realm of the living. The only way to break the curse was to destroy the mirror completely. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Emily returned to Sarah's apartment one fateful night, armed with a sledgehammer. She faced the cursed mirror, her reflection warped and grotesque. Gathering all her strength, she swung the sledgehammer with a mighty blow, shattering the mirror into 1,000 pieces. As the glass shattered, a deafening howl echoed through the room, followed by a burst of icy wind that extinguished the candles they had placed around the apartment. Emily could feel the malevolent force retreating, its grip on Sarah finally loosening. Sarah's color returned, and a smile graced her lips once more. The nightmare was over, and they were free from the clutches of the best friend turned tormentor. But as Emily looked at Sarah, she couldn't help but wonder if they had truly escaped unscathed. There was something in Sarah's eyes, something cold and distant, that sent a chill down her spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that a part of her best friend had been lost forever, left behind in the shattered fragments of the cursed mirror. In the end, Emily couldn't help but wonder if some friendships, no matter how strong, were destined to be consumed by the darkness that lurked in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike.